Hi, good morning, everybody. I hope everyone is having a good day today. Happy Friday. You've officially made it to the end of the week. Now, just like last time, I was not able to come into class today, so your lesson will be done through this video. Now, this video is going to be extra important than normal because not only will I be teaching you this lesson, but I'll also be introducing your summative at the end of this video, so make sure you pay attention to that. And if you have any questions about your summative, please let me know. Now, today's lesson is going to be over immigration and urbanization in the market revolution. Now, last class, in the last video, we talked about the three factors that influenced the market revolution and its growth, right? And how that helped boost the economy in the United States. Now, with the market revolution, we saw how the transportation system um, had been evolved. We saw the creation of toll roads, the steamboats, and the canals, and also the use of the railroad, and how all the major cities in the country had now been connected, increasing trade, which then was going to boost the factory system, right, and find new ways to manufacture textiles. Right? We saw Eli Whitney create the cotton gin, interchangeable parts. It's going to be very important to the factory system. And Samuel Slater, who is going to help create the first big manufacturing center in New England. And we also saw new farming technologies, right, with John Deere creating the steel plow, um, so on and so forth, right? We saw a lot of those factors. Now, because of those different factors, we're going to see the market revolution is going to impact a lot of people, right? And so these cities, a lot of these manufacturing cities that develop their their economy, we're going to see a slight population growth, and that's due to two reasons. One reason is going to be because of immigration, right? Immigrating meaning that people are leaving one area to move to another. Typically, they're going to be leaving their homes to go uh, live in another area. But another reason is going to be due to urbanization, and today we'll be talking about exactly what that means. So let's go ahead and get to it. Like always, make sure you guys have your journals out to be taking notes because I will be checking. So all of these changes within the cities and the economy and the rise in the populations, this is going to change how the social classes are viewed, right? Up until this time, we've really only seen um, a lot of the lower class and then the higher class. So people either had a lot of money and were super rich, or people were poor. But because of market revolution, we're going to see the rise in the middle class, meaning that there's going to be a new group of social class that are comfortably in the middle, right? They're going to make enough money so that they can support their families, um, and not have to live paycheck to paycheck, right? Just like the uh, lower class had to, right? They're not under threat because of money. And so this is going to affect families, right? Now these families are rising, right? They have money, not enough to be considered rich and have a bunch of mansions and horses, but just enough to live comfortably. And this middle class label is going to affect them and the roles that people play in them, right? Because we're going to see a new cycle be created, right? Within the United States, we're going to see farmers, they're going to feed the workers that live and work in the cities, who then are going to provide these farm families with these mass-produced goods. And it's just going to be a constant repeating cycle that is increasing the standard of living for people. And now, like I said, the people in these families, right, is typically going to consist of a father, a husband, and their children. And they are all going to play very significant roles. And gender is going to be a huge factor in telling what role someone plays in these new middle class families. Now, it is during this time where we really do see the emphasis and the gender roles that we see today, those are going to be solidified during this time period, where the man is going to be labeled as a provider, the worker. They're the ones who are supposed to take care and support the family by providing money and protection, while the woman, well, their role is going to be a lot more defined. So, for women during this time, they're really going to have two options for work, right? They're either going to work in domestic service, like nannying, or teaching, right? Factory jobs were not that common. That was mostly for single women. Now, what I mean by that, because I know we've talked about how factories relied on young women to work for them. This, these is simply referring to single adult women, right? The factories are talking about younger teenage women. This is referring to single adult women, right? Once they're grown. Now, again, these factory jobs are not that common, right? So those single women, they only had those two options to work. However, once they became once they got married, the women would have to leave their jobs and take up duties at home. Now, this idea that this woman had to be at home and take care of the house, well, that's going to earn a name during this time period, right? And that's going to be known as the cult of domesticity, right? And we now have a new stereotype or belief on what a woman should be or what she should look like, right? And that's going to be known as true womanhood. Now, it's really during this time period, during the rise of this middle class, this new social class, where people are going to start to believe that a woman's place is going to be in the home. And she's going to have a very distinctive role in the family. She's going to be the caregiver, she's going to be the mother. She's also going to be a provider, but in a very different way, right? She's providing for her family in the sense that she's in charge of the home. She's in charge of cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kids, educating them if she must, um, making sure to relieve any stress from the husband. You know, she's going to have all of these roles, right, as a woman. And this is where we see a lot of these gender roles to this day. But not only does that mean that this is the role she has in the family, but as a woman on her own, she's going to have her own way. She has this new way that she has to represent herself, right? So now, as a woman, not only does she have to be a mother, but this is the image that she has to portray, right? She has to be virtuous, right? She has to be moral, and she has to be submissive. Now, what I mean by that is that not only does she have to be submissive for her husband, but she has to be submissive to any man that she interacts with, if she interacts with them. But also, she has to be submissive to society. Because it is also very important to remember that women at this time, they did not have a lot of opportunities to grow, right? They didn't have the right to vote. They weren't allowed to vote. They didn't have the ability or the right to own land, or in very rare cases, they didn't have the ability to make money. So it was very important for women in this middle class to be submissive to the men of society. However, during this time period, women are not going to be the only ones whose roles slightly change, right? Last class we talked about how children were involved in the market revolution, specifically the lower class children, and how they were working in factories. So during this time, those numbers of lower class children working in factories began to increase, the numbers began to increase. Because we all know that if they were lower class, that means that their families did not have a lot of money, and this was a great opportunity for them to go earn money for their families. However, with the rise of the middle class, their children, they didn't need to work. They were now able to do what upper class families had always been able to do, right? Now that they're not worried about having to make money and provide for their families, right? And so now, again, they're able to do what these richer families were able to do, meaning that their families could afford to send their children to school, right? Instead of sending them to go work in the factories. But if they weren't able to send them to school, their other option would be to educate them at home, and now that job would fall on the women of the family. So now that we've talked about the change in the social families, now we can actually talk about urbanization and immigration, right? Both of those things are going to greatly impact the population in the cities. Now, urbanization is a very important keyword, so make sure you underline, highlight, put a little star under it, next to it, whatever you need to do that emphasizes in your notes how important this word is. Now, urbanization is going to be the process of people moving from rural areas to cities, right? So we're going to see a huge rise in people moving from the farming area, the farming towns, to go live in these big cities. And again, we're going to see a huge rapid growth in the cities, right? Again, mostly due to immigration, where people are leaving their homes to go live somewhere else. And that is going to lead to crowding houses. It's going to lead to a large, poor sanitation, right? Because remember, at this time, we didn't really have plumbing, right? So it's not going to be the cleanest. It's going to lead to the spread of infectious diseases because it's not as clean everywhere. And there's also going to be a higher rate of crime, especially in these working class neighborhoods, right? And so we're really going to focus on the immigrants because they play a huge role in the country during this time. Now, we saw a huge surge in immigration, specifically during the 1820s to 1860s, right? They're going to come from a lot of places in Europe, right? Great Britain, Ireland, Germany. But if you look at this chart, you really see it really puts into perspective how fast these immigrants came to the country, right? Starting off in 1820 to 1830, these first set of 10 years, the number of immigrants were really about 54 or 55,000 people, right? But in the next set of 10 years, from 1831 to 1840, that number is going to grow to 208,000%, right? And so that is really quite a big jump. And we have to ask ourselves, why? Why do all of a sudden do we see this jump in immigrants coming from Ireland and Germany? Well, in Ireland, if you read your readings, it tells you that Ireland, the Irish are going to face discrimination from the Roman Catholics, right? So they're going to flee to the United States in order to receive religious freedom, right? Escape religious persecution, right? But also in Ireland, the people are going to be going through what's known as the potato famine in the 1840s, meaning that during this time, some of their crops are going to fail, and the Irish are going to go through this period of food struggle, right? There, a lot of people are not going to get fed. Um, and so, in order to escape that, they're going to leave Ireland to go to the United States, mostly to feed themselves, right? To because they're hungry, right? But they're also going to find jobs. Now, the Germans, they're going to immigrate to the United States for very different reasons. Now, in Germany, their country is going to be going through a lot of economic hardships, right? So their main focus is to, move to this new state, a new country to make money, find jobs and make money. But also in the 1840s, Germany is going to go through a failed democratic revolution, right? Germany is going to attempt to establish a democracy in their country that is going to fail, leading to a rise in tensions politically between the people, in which people are going to leave their country. But there are also a bunch of other reasons for immigration, right? And because of this surge, we're going to see a development in the ocean transportation, right? That has changed, and that's going to lead to immigration. Right, so now the ability for people to immigrate from wherever they're coming from across the seas, that transportation boat technology is going to be greatly improved, right? Making it faster and safer. Again, there's going to be famines and revolutions in Europe that are going to drive people from their homelands. But the United States is also going to end up growing their reputation, right? So it is during this time that the United States starts to get that idea, get that label from people of being a country that offers new economic opportunities. But it's also going to gain this label of being a country that offers political freedom. So we know now, to this day, the United States has this reputation of being America, land of the free, America, land of new opportunities, right? And to this day, we still hear immigrants referring to the United States as that, right? We still hear immigrants saying as a reason that they moved to the United States was to start new, right? And so it's during this time period where that becomes the reputation of the United States. So with all of these immigrants, mostly they're going to come to find new jobs. Therefore, they're going to strengthen the economy of the United States, right? By providing a very steady, inexpensive labor. And they're going to work in whatever jobs are available, right? Typically, they're going to work in a lot of the lower class jobs, right? So they're going to be factory workers, they're going to be sanitation cleaners, so on and so forth. And that is going to lead to the increased demand of produced goods. And so when these immigrants, especially the ones from Europe, arrive to the United States, the Irish, well, they are not just going to settle anywhere. The Irish are going to remain, once they get to the United States, they are going to move to New New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. So they're going to stay in kind of this area, the coastal areas, for many reasons, right? Now, as I said, the Irish, they were going through the potato famine in that they had little money. So any Irish person that was able to leave Ireland to move to the United States, they're basically going to take up all of the money that they had saved and they're going to use every single bit of it to move to the United States. And now the reason that they stay in the cities, well, is because the cities are going to have the most opportunities, right? They're going to have the most job opportunities. And that is their main focus, to make money. However, the Germans, on the other hand, they are not going to stay in the cities, right? The Germans, when they immigrate to the United States, well, they're going to be more middle class, right? They're not going to be in a huge desperate need for money. So they're going to move more Midwest and even go as far as Texas. And if you'd notice, here in Texas, we have a lot of German influences in our culture, right? Like the idea of kolaches, right? If you know what those are, the little pigs in a blanket you get in donut shops, those are German, right? So we're going to see a lot of German influence during that time. However, because of this rise in immigration, a lot of Americans, right, American born people, they're not going to like this, right? In fact, that they're going to be alarmed at how many new immigrants have come to the United States. So much so that we see a rise in a new belief system. And that belief system is going to be known as nativism. Right? Now, the nativists, they are going to be, again, alarmed by this huge surge of immigration, right? They're going to the point that they are going to fear that these immigrants are going to come to this country to take their jobs from them, right? And so these nativists, right, these American born people, they're going to have this really huge beliefs. This belief is going to be very strong to the point that they're going to create their own political party known as the Know Nothing Party. right? Officially known as the American Party, right? And they're going to believe themselves to be the supreme order of the Star Spangled Banner, right? Saying we are the true Americans, right? Because this is our country, we were born here. Now, the nativists in this party were mostly Protestants who distrusted the Germans and the Irish, right? Again, having this fear that they came here to take all the jobs of the American people, right? Removing that ability for the American people to grow for themselves, right? And we're going to see this distrust grow into an anti-foreign feeling. They're going to be against immigration, right? And again, to this day, we still see a lot of these beliefs. However, this anti-foreign feeling is going to fade a little bit over time as tensions are going to rise between the North and the South over slavery, right? Slavery is going to become an issue. In the time leading up to the Civil War, well, that's going to become more important. That's going to become a more important issue than the anti-foreign feeling that we see during this time. So up until this point, we've really been focusing on the immigrants that have moved to the cities. Now these immigrants, they are going to affect a large group of people, and that includes the free African Americans that live in the cities. Because despite being free, the African American people at this time are still facing many problems. Despite being free and earning their freedom in the North, right? However, they're still not going to have the same opportunities, right? They're not going to have the economic and political equality that most Americans do, meaning that not all jobs are going to be available to them, including those that are in most demand, like the factoring jobs, right? But they're also not going to have political equality, meaning that they are still not able to vote or be represented in their um, represented in the government, right? And so here's where the immigrants play a part. The immigrants, once they move to the cities, they're gonna have a lot of frequent clashes with the African Americans, right? And that's gonna be for two reasons. One, immigrants and African Americans are gonna fall under the same economic class, meaning that they are both in the lower class, right? Meaning that they need money. Because of this, both of these groups of people had to live and were forced to live in the same neighborhoods. That's going to be a huge problem. Because one thing to remember at the end of the day is that the Irish are white, right? So they're going to adopt a lot of the same beliefs that the white Americans have. And they're even going to go as far as trying to push African Americans out of jobs. They're going to push them out of jobs, and that's going to cause a lot of problems between the two groups. And now, because we see such a huge rise in immigrants in the cities during this time, that's obviously going to impact politics, right? And so what we're going to see here is that the Democratic parties are now going to attempt to gain the trust their of these immigrants, specifically the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is going to now start encouraging immigrants to vote for them, right? They have adopted this idea, this belief that Andrew Jackson had as being the common man. And so the Democratic Party are now going to advertise themselves as the Democratic Party for the common man, right? For the average worker. Um, and now it's important to remember that the Irish, remember, they already have problems with the African Americans, right? And one core belief of the Democratic Party is that they wanted to keep slaves, right? Whereas the Whigs, their opponents, they were anti-slavery, right? They wanted to remove slavery from the country. And the Irish, they're not going to like that. So they are not going to like the Whigs. They're going to fear that anti-slavery belief that the Whigs have, which is going to push them to side with the Democrats. Now, just for a second, and so as a result of the immigration that's happening in America during this early 19th century, economically, we're really going to see a boost in the country, right? We're going to see a boost in the demand for manufactured goods. We're going to see a lot of people starting to work for these big corporations, right, in the country. Obviously, being a good time for America and how much money they're making. Politically, we're going to see a little bit more tensions happening, especially because they have to deal with a new issue of immigration. Like, do we support the immigrants? Do we not support the immigrants? If we do support the immigrants, what political party do they side with? So on and so forth. So America has to deal with that. Socially, there's going to be also tensions, especially among the lower class, right? Now that the lower class is being made up of people from different backgrounds, whether that's the free African Americans, the Irish immigrants, or the lower class Americans, right? So some that's going to have some effects later on, and that's going to lead to some future problems that we're going to talk about. But now, today, at this point, you will have a summative next class. So on Tuesday, next time I see you guys, I will be checking for 3 things. One, I will be checking for your notes. Second, I will be checking for your pre-work. Now, your summative is going to be a Socratic seminar, meaning that we are going to have a class discussion. It is important to note that a Socratic seminar is not a debate, so there are not 2 sides of a story. There's one topic, and we are just discussing beliefs, right? Now, this Socratic seminar is going to be very in-depth, and we're going to explore ideas in depth. So the Socratic seminar is going to take up the majority of class, and I will give you your packets. Now, the topic for the Socratic seminar is over, was Andrew Jackson a good president? And it is a 2-part assignment. So half of your summative, 50%, is going to be the pre-work, right? And that includes reading and annotating the packet that I give you and creating 4 discussion questions for the seminar. Now, another packet I'm going to give you is going to be a Socratic seminar guideline. On there will be a rubric for your participation, which is going to be the other 50% of your grade, and it's going to have a guide of reference to help you create your discussion questions. So in that packet there will be sentence stems on how to create questions, even have it's even going to have a dialogue of an example of what a Socratic seminar discussion should look like. Now, remember that it is very important for you to do your readings over the weekend because, again, it is worth 50% of your grade. If you show up to class on Tuesday and you do not have this pre-work done, the highest you can get is a 50% based off of your participation. So it is very, very important that you review, read, and annotate over the weekend, meaning that no, you cannot just highlight things in your reading. You must have notes written on the side of the reading, right? Start creating your beliefs, some discussion points you can have, some important facts that are needed, so on and so forth, right? So reading and annotating means highlighting and taking notes and creating 4 discussion questions for your seminar. Now, of course, if you have any questions, make sure you guys let me know and step right across the hall because, as always, my door is always open for you guys. Now, this is the end of this video, so if you have any questions, please let me know. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day and have a great weekend. Bye.